Emerald City Girls Academy was one of the most respected schools in the heart of the Obado community. Known for its affordability and quality, it had earned a reputation as a top choice for parents who wanted both strong academics and moral development for their daughter. The school boasted a team of passionate teachers, a high standard of learning. Later that morning, the principal walked into the classroom with a new face beside her. The students immediately stood up to greet her, their eyes curiously scanning the unfamiliar woman. With a warm smile, the principal addressed the class. "My dearest finalists," she began, "I can see you've all settled in well. I have a bit of news for you both, good and bad." She paused. First, the bad news. Mrs. K, your English teacher, has moved away with her family and won't be returning. There was a soft murmur of disappointment. Mrs. K had been more than just a teacher. She was strict but deeply caring, someone the girls trusted and admired. But the good news, the principal continued, is that we have someone new. This is Miss Moran, your new English teacher and class advisor. The girls clapped out of courtesy, but inside, most of them were indifferent. They were too focused on surviving their final year and getting out of school to bother much with the new teacher. Still, there was something about Miss Moran that caught their attention. As soon as the principal left, she stepped forward and introduced herself with a wide, confident smile. "I'm excited to be here, not just as your teacher, but as someone who wants to mentor and guide you," she said. Her tone was warm and approachable. Though the girls didn't show it outwardly, they were intrigued not so much by her words, but by her appearance. She was stylish, dressed in sleek outfits, wearing the latest hairstyles, and carrying a designer handbag. Her fashion sense stood out. A few of the girls even whispered to each other about how cool she looked. Though they weren't ready to open up emotionally yet, they quietly hoped they could learn a thing or two from her, if not in academics, at least in fashion. At that moment, none of them had the slightest idea just how much this new teacher would change their lives. Miss Moran didn't take long to settle into her new role. From the very first week, she began forming bonds with the girls slowly, carefully, and intentionally. She greeted them with warmth, remembered their names almost immediately, and made small but thoughtful gestures that felt personal. Her fashion sense continued to turn heads, always stylish, always put together, which naturally drew the girls in. But beyond the clothes and charms, she showed a level of care many of them weren't used to receiving, especially from adults. She would check in on them after class, ask about their lives, and offer advice in a tone that was more big sister than teacher. It didn't take long for many of the girls, particularly those who felt unseen or unloved at home, to start gravitating toward her. For them, Miss Moran quickly became more than just a teacher. She was someone who made them feel special. One afternoon, just before lunch, Miss Moran walked into class carrying a large, mysterious box. The girls noticed it but didn't think much of it until just as they were about to leave for their break, she stepped in front of a door, closed it gently, and started singing "Happy Birthday" to one of the girls, Teo. Everyone was stunned. Teo stood frozen, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. "How did you know?" she asked, overwhelmed. Miss Moran smiled and explained that she had seen the birth date in the registration book. She opened the box to reveal a beautifully decorated birthday cake, which she had brought just for Teo. The room erupted in applause and excitement. That small gesture had a huge impact. For Teo, whose own mother had forgotten her birthday the year before, it felt deeply personal. Later that day, she shared with her best friend how surprised and touched she was. "Even my own mom didn't do anything for me," she said, her voice soft with emotion. "I don't know where Miss Moran has been all my life. That birthday celebration was just the beginning." Over the next few weeks, Miss Moran made it a habit to celebrate each girl's birthday with a cake, a small gift, and words of encouragement. The girls started looking forward to their birthdays not just for the attention, but for the validation they received from her. They began to open up more, laugh louder, and lean into her affection. To them, she wasn't just a teacher anymore, she was a friend, a role model, someone who made them feel like they mattered. However, not everyone was fully convinced. A few girls remained distant, unwilling to let their guard down, suspicious of why a teacher would go so far. But those voices were drowned out by the growing admiration the majority held for her. As Miss Maureen continued to charm her way into their hearts with gifts, kind words, and attention, she was also slowly building something far more dangerous: complete trust. And that trust would soon become the perfect cover for something none of them ever saw coming. As weeks passed, Miss Maureen continued to win the hearts of most of the girls in class. She was attentive, caring, and always had a listening ear. Many of the students, especially those who lacked parental presence or affection at home, had fully come to see her as a mother figure. But what they didn't know was that behind her sweet smile and designer outfits, Ms. Maureen had a hidden agenda. One afternoon, as the rest of the school headed out for lunch, she called a few of the girls over for a quick chat. These were the girls she had grown closest to, the ones who had started menstruating and whom she believed were emotionally dependent on her. As they laughed and settled around her desk, she suddenly shifted the conversation and asked, "How many of you have started seeing your period?" The question caught them off guard. There was a long pause before a few hands went up hesitantly. Sensing their discomfort, Miss Maureen softened her tone and reassured them. "Come on, ladies, we're all women here. This is something we should talk about openly. I want to help you understand your bodies. No one else is going to teach you this, and I care about your future." Her voice was comforting, almost hypnotic. The girls slowly relaxed and began to engage in the conversation. Miss Maureen used that moment to isolate them emotionally. She asked them to write down their names and began holding special private meetings just for them. At first, these gatherings felt like mentorship sessions. She told them emotional stories about her past, most of which were lies about how she had once been naive and taken advantage of, and how she had vowed to protect young girls from making the same mistake. The girls were moved. They saw her as brave, wise, and protective. Over time, she convinced them that these meetings needed to stay secret for your own good. And because they trusted her, they agreed. Then came the shift. In one of their meetings, Miss Maureen handed each girl my 5,000 and began to talk about financial independence. She told them that the key to freedom as a woman was economic power, and that most women stayed in bad marriages because they had no money of their own. The girls listened intently, absorbing every word. When one asked how they could start making money at their age, Ms. Maureen smiled as if she had been waiting for that question all along. "That's why I'm here," she said softly. "You can actually use the very thing that men often try to exploit to build your own future." The girls looked confused, so she explained further carefully but vaguely that because they had started menstruating, their bodies now held something valuable. Their eggs, something valuable. Their eggs. She hinted that they could donate these eggs not in a shameful or harmful way, but as a smart way to make money and protect themselves from pregnancy until marriage. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted her completely. And with their consent, albeit uninformed, Miss Maureen's twisted plan was now fully in motion. Saturday came quicker than expected. The 8 girls, believing they were about to take the first step toward a more independent life, lied to their parents, saying they had extra lessons at school to prepare for exams. They met Miss Maureen at a discreet location outside town where she handed each of them some transport money and instructed them to take a cab to a nearby town. Once they arrived, she joined them and led them to a building labeled Comfort Fertility Center. The girls exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. Inside, Miss Maureen asked them to wait at the reception while she handled the paperwork. What the girls didn't know was that she had signed consent forms in their names without their knowledge. Soon, a nurse came out and led them one by one into a room where they underwent tests and were given multiple injections. Although many of them were visibly anxious, Miss Maureen offered reassuring looks from across the room, silently signaling for them to stay calm. After the procedures, Miss Maureen gathered them in a private room. With a warm smile that now masked a much darker intent, she congratulated them. "You've started something powerful," she said. "You've begun a journey that not only empowers you, but helps others too." Then she lowered her voice and revealed the truth. Those injections had started the process of stimulating their ovaries to produce eggs, which would later be retrieved and sold. The room fell into stunned silence. "You'll be helping people who can't have children," she added quickly, trying to frame it as a noble act. But then her tone darkened. "You must follow all instructions. If you stop the injections, you could die. And if you tell anyone, you put your life at risk." Fear gripped the girls. She showed them how to self-administer the hormone shots in their lower abdomen and told them they'd earn N50,000 after each cycle, every 4 months. Confused, scared, but also feeling trapped, they took the supplies and left. In the days that followed, the girls became noticeably withdrawn. They stopped joking around in class, avoided conversations, and seemed lost in their own thought. A classmate, Alero, known for always being in everyone's business, noticed the change, especially in her friend Omi. When she confronted her, Omai simply brushed her off, unwilling to share the dark truth. Meanwhile, Miss Morin kept up her act as the perfect, lovable teacher, bringing in gifts, smiling, and checking in on her students as though nothing had changed. The girls were emotionally torn. They didn't know whether to fear her or admire her. Some were still convinced she meant, well, clinging to the belief that the money and guidance were acts of kindness. But behind closed doors, doubt was growing. They had to inject themselves in secret, hiding syringes in school bags and bathroom cabinets. Teo, one of the girls, almost got caught by her mother while giving herself a shot in the bathroom. That night, she sat in bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing she could go back in time. The fear of dying if they stopped the injections had silenced them, but the pain of what they were going through was only just beginning. The final round of injections came on a Thursday morning. Miss Marine pulled the 8 girls aside during school hours and handed each of them a vial and syringe. "This is the last shot," she said in a hushed tone. "It'll help release the eggs. Use it tonight." Saturday morning, we go to finish the process. The girls nodded nervously and tucked the syringes into the waistbands of their skirt. That night, they followed her instructions like they always had, some out of fear, others still clinging to the idea that this was helping them. When Saturday arrived, they repeated their now familiar lie to their parents and made their way to the fertility clinic. One by one, they were called into a private room for the egg retrieval. Each session took about 30 minutes. Afterward, the girls were taken to a general ward to rest. Miss Morin visited them there, all smiles, her voice full of praise. "You girls have done incredibly well, especially you two," she said, pointing at Teo and another girl, 40 eggs each. That's record-breaking. The girls, though exhausted and sore, managed small smiles. Miss Moraine handed them their N50,000 and promised more to come if they continued. But not everything was okay. That evening, Teo began to feel sharp pains in her stomach. She couldn't sit up straight, couldn't eat, and felt a strange bloating sensation that worsened by the hour. Her mother, a widow, tried everything from warm tea to painkillers, but nothing helped. Then, without warning, Teo fainted. Panic set in. Her mother and a few neighbors rushed her to a local clinic, but the doctor there took one look at her condition and shook his head. "Her stomach is filled with fluid," he explained. "Her organs are swollen, and we can't determine why with the equipment here. You need to take her to a bigger hospital immediately. By morning, They were at a city hospital where a team of specialists began running tests. After hours of scans and blood work, the doctors had their answer: ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, OHS, caused by high doses of hormones designed to force the ovaries to produce more eggs. The head doctor was shocked. "She's only 15, he said. "Why on earth would a girl this age be injecting hormones like this?" Teo, weak and in pain, refused to talk. Her mother begged her for answers, but Teo only cried and shook her head. Finally, a young resident doctor named Dr. Honor was allowed to speak with her alone. She didn't pressure Teo, but instead shared her own story: how she was once a student just like her, how she had dreams of becoming a doctor and almost gave up. Her calm voice and gentle questions broke through Teo's wall of fear. Slowly, Teop began to open up. Between sobs, she told the truth: the injections, the lies, the fear of dying if she didn't obey, and how Miss Morin had promised to help them avoid pregnancy and make money by selling their eggs. Dr. Honor was horrified. 40 eggs retrieved, and only in 50,000 in return. It was exploitation, plain and simple. With Teo's confession, the full story finally began to unravel, and justice was set in motion. With Teo's brave confession, the truth quickly spread. The hospital wasted no time in notifying the local authorities, and a formal report was sent to the police station in Obodo. Teo provided the names of the 7 other girls involved, and the investigation began immediately. By the time officers arrived at Miss Morin's home, she was already packed and ready to flee town with her young daughter. Her bags were zipped, and her travel documents were neatly stacked on the table. She didn't even get the chance to resist. She was arrested on the spot. At the station, during interrogation, she denied everything at first. But once confronted with Teo's medical report and the mounting evidence, her composure cracked. Tearfully, she admitted to orchestrating the entire scheme after overhearing a conversation about how lucrative egg harvesting could be. She confessed to connecting with a shady doctor, using her job at the school as a front to gain access to vulnerable girls, and forging documents to get them through medical procedures without their parents' knowledge. She had sold each egg for 1 million naira, becoming rich off the innocence and trust of children. The court case that followed drew national attention. The doctor who had assisted her lost his medical license and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. His clinic was permanently shut down. Miss Morin, on the other hand, received a 35-year sentence with hard labor and was ordered to forfeit all profits she had made. The money was distributed among the affected families as partial compensation for the trauma and potential long-term health consequences the girls faced. Though justice was served, the scars ran deep. Teo, still dealing with chronic pain and frequent medical checkups, couldn't bring herself to return to Emerald City Girls Academy. She and her mother relocated to a new city to start fresh. As for the other 7 girls, some seemed physically fine, but emotionally, they would never be the same. Trust had been shattered. What started as a teacher-student bond had spiraled into a nightmare none of them could have imagined. This story, though heartbreaking, mirrors many real-life cases happening around the world where predators hide behind smiles, charm, and authority to manipulate the innocent. It's a harsh reminder that not everyone who seems kind has good intentions. For parents, this is a wake-up call. Being present in your child's life isn't optional, it's critical. No matter how busy life gets, children need someone they can confide in, someone who sees them and asks questions. For schools and communities, it's a call to strengthen vetting processes and watch for red flags. And for young people, the biggest lesson is this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, speak up. No amount of money is worth your safety, your health, or your future. Evil often wears the face of kindness, but courage and truth will always expose it. May we all stay alert, protect the vulnerable, and ensure that no more girls are robbed of their dignity under the guise of help.